Hey folks, welcome back. My name is Krishna. If you're new to the channel, welcome. In this video, we're going to take a look at how you can use letters as a line confidence tool. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's start off by going ahead and using our text tool. We'll just create the letter L, and I'll make this dark. And in order for us to practice this, let's go ahead and pick a typeface that is relatively simple but thick. So let's see. I'll pick something like Helvetica. Because chances are you probably already have this particular font on your computer. So I've got the letter L. I'm going to go ahead and drop the opacity of this layer, and I'll make a brand new layer on top. And what we're going to do to practice our line confidence is we're going to use our brush. You want to make sure your brush has pressure sensitivity. I'm using a custom brush that I have as part of a brush pack called my Shaved Ice Brush. Actually, you know what? I'll just use my Crescent Crusader brush just to go ahead and show you how that one works as well. So this simple exercise involves just practicing using the Shift key to create straight lines. And it's okay if you go over the lines. What you're looking for is control. We're starting off with the L because it's got the hardest edges. So this is an important thing to practice, just getting your arm to move across the entire canvas. Let's make that a little bit larger. We'll go ahead and take that letter L and we'll scale it up a bit. Again, we're holding down the Shift key. And you're just working on moving your arm. It's not so much about the lines that you're creating, it's really about getting your arms conditioned to, completely moving as opposed to using your wrist. So now that we have the letter L taken care of, another exercise you can practice is if I were to now pick something like the letter M, and I'll just use a lowercase m for this example. This allows us to practice our ability to convey curves. And so when I draw, I use my entire shoulder and my arm. I don't just use the wrist. So that's what you want to think about when you're creating this letter M. And I think this is a great exercise, especially if you don't know what to draw, or if you're just trying to practice and you want to have something meaningful that you can look at. Make a thick letter that has some straight edges and some curves, and then simply practice. So I'm going to start off by using the Shift key, and I'll convey all of the straight lines first. I've got some vertical straight lines, so where the curve is just about to begin. Again, we're not worried about perfection here, but we're just worried about getting our arms conditioned to moving. So I've got all the straight parts of this, and then I'm going to use my ability to create those curves. And they're not going to be perfect, but that's okay. You're looking for making that sweeping movement. You can hit undo as you need to. And so you've got something that looks like this. So it's not great, but it does get you thinking about using your entire arm, and it does help you with line confidence. So what do I mean by line confidence? Well, initially when people are starting out to digitally draw, they tend to draw, with a lot of wavy lines. They're using their entire wrist. So even if I were to maybe not exaggerate that so much, I'm just holding down a straight line like that, you can see that there's a little bit of a wave. This forces you to, first of all, know that you can make a straight line with the Shift key. But second of all, it allows you to, if I make this letter M bigger, which is probably what I needed to do in the first place, just make it large enough to where I can draw large, and I'll hide all of this stuff. You're not really worried about having to make one full continuous, stroke. You're just conveying the round parts, right? and you're working on making one gesture, you can always come back in and hold down the shift key. Again, it's really about training your arm. It's not so much about trying to make a perfect copy of the letter M, but what this does is it gets your arm moving. So we have this particular structure here, and since you've watched the video up until this point, I want to show you a couple of things that you may not be aware of. Um, Letters can be great for environments, especially buildings and other structures like that. So I have this letter L here, and currently it's a editable type. If I were to right click on it, I can convert that to a raster, which is basically just a standard shape. So if I right click and choose rasterized type, it now is not editable, but I can modify it. So I can hit Control T, Command T, and I can choose perspective, and I can drag out the corners like so. And now I have basically uh, one face of a building. So now what I can do is I can draw my vertical lines. And then for the diagonal lines, again, practice freehanding it. I've shown in a couple of other videos how you can actually draw perfect diagonal lines, but this is really about, again, training your arm to get line confidence. So if you're starting to use your arm, you will start to make those straight lines. It's okay if they bleed out towards the edges because you can always trim that with the lasso tool. So I'll make a new layer here, and then building off of a previous exercise that we talked about where you're trying to figure out like what to draw and some practice that aids. You can actually add some dimension. Now we have a thick letter, and then we can use one side for our building. So something else that I will talk about in a future video is using Photoshop's library. It's very, very powerful for reusing certain assets over and over again. And just to give you a little sneak peek here, in my libraries panel here, if I click under your library, which is my library, I have a series of predefined library shapes. For example, I have a set of windows like this. I can drag those windows, scale them. I can hit Control J, Command J, makes a copy, and I'll do this about 11 times. Let's merge these. I'll scale them down. Command J duplicates layers. Good keyboard shortcut to know. So I've got something like this. And if I want to match the perspective of my building, I can try a couple of things. You can try perspective here. You want to make sure that when you're using perspective, though, that the top of your windows and the bottom of your windows are fairly close in alignment with the top and bottom edges, like you're seeing here. And I can choose perspective. I've got something like this.